giving a speech entitled My 4 Days in Jacksonville. Please welcome with me, John Love.
Madam Toastmaster, fellow Toastmasters, welcome guests. Last night my wife and I got off an airplane and we were sitting at the Tampa airport waiting for our shuttle to take us home, and I get a phone call, and it's Ms. Noble, and she said, "John, do you realize you're on schedule to speak tomorrow?" And I said, "I'm what?" Because I felt very ashamed and embarrassed. I usually take my Toastmasters assignments very seriously, and I felt very ashamed and embarrassed that I didn't know it. However, there was a reason, and I was thinking at the time, and just in the shock of it, I was thinking, how on earth could you forget something like that? How could you miss it? However, in the 6 weeks leading up to March 16th, my life had been pretty much on hold. I was staring down the barrel of the biggest speech of my life, thinking thoughts like, when I was 25 years old, I never dreamed at my age I would be putting myself in this position of this kind of challenge. As many of you know, I'm an aspiring professional speaker, and I wanted to start with the college market. I wanted to start with Florida. Florida is my market. There's 126 colleges in Florida. And I thought, wow, that would be great if I could give maybe just 2 speeches from each school, or no, 2 speeches from about 30% of the schools a year. I would be fine. I would be set. That way I wouldn't have to get on an airplane, which I don't like to do. Quite frankly, before a plane takes off, I do more praying than I do in church. So Joan said, "John, do you have a prepared speech?" And I said, "No, I don't." And I was about to decline on speaking tonight when it dawned on me that I do have a speech, but it's not prepared. And I said, "Joan, would you give me about a half hour? Let me call you back. Let me think this out." Called her back, and I said, "Yes, I'm on. I'll do it." And I thought, well, Monday I'll practice. But my customers today said, that's not going to happen. I had the busiest day of my month. And as that always works out, so this is totally unprepared. You will never hear me this unprepared again, I promise you. And I'm not a Craig Michael. I don't have an IQ of 150, and I don't practice en route to Toastmasters and then win a blue ribbon like he does. I have to prepare and prepare and prepare, of which I always do. The speech that I'm talking about was in Jacksonville, a galaxy where no man's ever gone before. It's the best I could do. And I was going to give a speech at the APCA convention. APCA is the Association for the Promotion of College Activities. They have 4 conventions a year in different parts of the country, and this was the southeastern one where a lot of the colleges in Florida will be attending. Now what they do is they bring in magicians, singers, bands, hypnotists, and speakers. So if you do well there, you do well. If you don't, you've got to wait another year, and that put a lot of pressure on me. In the 6 months leading up to this speech, as you know, I forgot who it was, said, "John, I haven't seen you much lately." Well, nobody saw me much lately. I practiced and practiced and practiced. I probably hit the golf ball less in that 6-week period than I have in a long time. I put my life on hold because this speech meant so much to me. It was 10 minutes. It's what is called a showcase. You go to APCA and you do 2 things. Number one, you give what is called an ed session, which is an educational session. You actually become a professor in a classroom setting. Now, the children, the students, it's voluntary. They don't have to come there. And I spoke 50 minutes. I used mostly a PowerPoint presentation. It went great. I wasn't nervous at all. However, the showcase was the next day, and that was 10 minutes max. And that was the big show. That was the one. In the 6 weeks leading up to that, I went out on my lanai every night and practiced. And something happened that has never happened to me before. I actually got nervous practicing on my lanai. My most favorite place in my whole world is to go out there and practice my speeches and have some me time, and I couldn't believe that even in my practicing I was nervous. In the hour that led up to the speech, I couldn't begin to tell you how nervous I was. I can just tell you this way, just to be perfectly honest with you. I had to go to the restroom 3 times. In the 15 minutes leading up to the speech, let me backtrack and tell you one thing that you might find entertaining. The night before the speech, I cheated. The convention was at the Hyatt on the St. Johns River. I was staying in the 4th floor. The convention was being held mostly on the 2nd, 3rd floor. All the meeting rooms and auditoriums were on the 3rd floor. So at 11 o'clock that night, I got on the elevator. I went down to the 3rd floor. There was nobody on the floor. I went to the room where I was to speak, flipped the lights on, got up on stage and gave my speech. And I was nervous then. I couldn't believe it. In the 15 minutes leading up to my speech, I was walking up and down the back hallway behind the stage, practicing my speech. Stopped twice, and went to God in prayer and asked Him to bring a calm over my life and to help me say something to these students that would help them. In the few seconds that they were giving the introduction, giving my bio, I felt a calm come over me that just absolutely shocked me, and I knew it could be nothing more than God answering my prayer. When He announced my name, I walked up on the stage, and I felt a command. I felt a stage presence like I've never had before. I was given a thunderous applause, and what's so much fun about college students as opposed to adults is when they applaud, they hoot and holler, and I just loved it. I started speaking. I couldn't believe the command that I had. I was absolutely in shock. They were cheering as I talked, going woo, doing stuff like that, and I couldn't believe it. I did something I've never done before. I started improvising and doing impromptu things, and they just worked out beautifully. And the students were doing something that you don't do. They laughed at my jokes. And I couldn't believe it. I was just elated. Just elated. One of the reasons I was so nervous was because I usually speak to a room of, what's our max here, about 40? Last year in October, I spoke to a crowd of 75 real estate people. However, in that auditorium, there was over 300 people. And the larger the crowd, the more nervous you should be, right? Yeah, that's my logic. When the speech was finished, I got a great ovation. I left the auditorium, and some of the students stopped me on the way and told me what a great job it was. And I spoke to them just for a little bit, but the kids couldn't read my mind, and I'm so glad they couldn't, because what I was thinking was, kids, I'd love to talk to you longer, but I've got to get up to my hotel room so I can jump up and down. And I did. Never dreamed at my age I would be putting myself in this position, but I thought really that I would stair-step it up. If in a perfect world, I speak to generally 30, 40 people. Last October spoke to 75. The natural stair-step would be 70. I mean about 100, 125. But this was over 300 people. And I met the challenge. And I met the challenge in a large part because of you. I just want you to know that. I want to thank you so much for all the feedback that you've given me, the encouragement, the the constructive criticism. I want to say to you visitors and you new members, you're in the right place. This is it. And a lot of that victory that I scored on March 16th was your victory. And I just want to thank you all from the bottom of my heart. Toastmaster.